It is month 4, week 3 of Praxis, and this week we talked about commerce and culture. Um, Basically, how capitalism has helped art grow and thrive. The first video we watched was Dr. Davies speaking specifically about how capitalism has really sparked in innovation throughout history. He started speaking about how most of history that we learn about is based around government achievements, so to speak. All the dates that you know, all of the information that you know generally is accomplishments of the government and not necessarily um, the market. So we talk about World War II, we talk about the Industrial Revolution, um, and the American Revolution, the French Revolution, all these revolutions, which happen to be mainly about war. We focus on that and how their successes and everything, but yet when we talk about different dates that he mentions in his video, like 1858, people couldn't tell you what happened then. So in 1858, actually, the telegraph was invented as the quickest way to get a message across country or even across the Atlantic, which revolutionized communication in general. Um, 1908, Model T Ford was created, gave transportation and mobility to people who didn't have it before. 1960, the contraceptive pill helped women not spend their whole entire lives pregnant, which was happening, and gave them more control over their lives, really. So basically, when we look throughout history, we try to not focus on how capitalism is actually a really good thing. Especially lately, and with my generation, unfortunately, we hear capitalism being demonized almost. We want things to be equal. We want people to everything to be just spread out and people for it to be fair. When in reality, competition is what helps us as a country and economy, as artists even, to thrive. Paul Cantor has several videos on how art actually thrives in a marketplace. Um, he starts to talk about how one of the biggest misconceptions of art and artists is how artists have to suffer in order to create good art. And that's just not true. Um, and I can understand where the misconception is coming from. I mean, when you learn about art throughout school, you hear about all of these people who are famous now but weren't in their lifetime. Um, when in reality, there are several people. Charles Dickens, who sold, tens of thousands of books throughout his lifetime, and Shakespeare, who people went to his plays specifically because they were his plays. And you see this because of the competitive market. And when you start to limit and say that art isn't art if it's competitive or if it pleases an audience, then my question is, why would you want to do art? Why would you want to do art if you're constantly suffering, if you weren't pleasing anyone? Um, I mean, even some of the greatest artists were pleasing someone. Patrons are even a type of market. So when you see all these artists who are doing religious paintings, it's not necessarily because they were themselves religious. It was because the Catholic Church had a lot of money and they were paying a lot of money for them to do paintings. So they were doing those specifically because they were getting paid by those people. So basically, what you can take away from this is that the art that we see today and admire, even books. Charles Dickens is one of the authors that are required in schools. Um, is formed from capitalism and the market and competitive marketplaces, because if there isn't competition, there is no reason to get better. And when we want to get better, new inventions come up. I mean, we, you know, started with plays, now we have movies, incredible movies even, um, and that wouldn't have happened if there was no competition. Almost every single thing that we have today that we enjoy and love is from the competitive marketplace. Not saying that there aren't exceptions, but generally, you see most of your famous artists coming out of competitive marketplaces. So that's my thoughts for the week. Definitely thought-provoking. It's different to think of art in a competitive form of light because, really, even myself as someone who is for capitalism, never really thought of art as being a competitive market, but that's exactly what it is. You have to have an audience in order for it to survive and thrive.